Okay, it's there.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Friday Morning Break Show with me, Carl Smith, where we try to help you to keep up your mojo.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good morning. How's your mojo today? Have you never felt like singing the blues? Or is it more a case of new year, new you? January can be a bit of a mojo-free zone, of course. And in school, that applies to the kids as well as to the adults. Everyone feels a bit meh and lacking in energy in January. The weather's grim. The lights are in the loft. The tree is on the tip. Oh, and did I mention the weather's grim? Yet somehow we got up on January the 6th, put on that new glove and scarf set that our Auntie Margaret bought us, and braved the blizzard. The first day back after Christmas may feel like the worst day of the year. Probably because it is. But we did it. So how did we keep our mojo up when it's in such short supply at this time of year? For some people, of course, their mojo is low every day. In fact, there is a conspicuous lack of mojo all year round. In recent years, it's fair to say that the profession has got a bit fed up. And when you're fed up, you don't want to get up. There's January-itis and there's all year round-itis. And one is very definitely better or worse than the other. So what's to be done? Is it all out of our control? Or can we do something to recover our mojo? As the saying goes, there are the controllables and the uncontrollables. So what can we do to control the controllables? Today I'm joined by someone who's given the topic of resilience a bit more thought than most, including on how to survive January, if not the whole year. Welcome, Jo Smith.
I need to bring a load of energy to the listeners this morning after that introduction. So it's a good job that January's treating me, and I hope you quite well. You're absolutely right. January is a tough month, isn't it, to be in any job, but as an educationalist, isn't January the time of mock exam marking and parents' evenings in the evening? It's dark when we leave for school. It's dark when we get home from school, isn't it? And then there's the famous Blue Monday. We haven't even reached that yet. January the 20th this year is the day that is considered to be one of the toughest days in the year, and still, too far away from payday to make all the difference. So I agree with you. But let's bring some warmth and some January cheer to our listeners this morning.
Absolutely. So how's I've got to say this line, and you'll forgive me for saying it, but you knew it was coming. How's your mojo, Jo?
Do you know what? I think it always helps that it's a Friday as well,
Yeah.
it? But thanks, Carl. I'm in a good place. I'm lucky enough to be a head teacher at Stephen and Sleaford High School,
Right.
which is an 11 to 18 school in Lincolnshire, and it's just an amazingly friendly and warm and successful place to be. So that makes my job easier to start with, doesn't it? But being a head teacher isn't always the easiest job. We just
No.
had the dreaded Ofsted, and your listeners will know that once you've cleared that hurdle, there's a kind of relief as well. So my mojo's doing okay, thank you, this morning.
Good. Glad to hear it. Why well, is January the toughest month? I mean, is all this sort of Blue Monday and all that stuff? Is that all a little bit overhyped? Is that, I think it was a marketing slogan at first, wasn't it? Something that was used to sell some product or another. Is it true that January is the toughest month in school, or do we work by a different calendar?
So I think there is some truth in it being a tough month. We're heading to the middle point of the year, aren't we? And certainly from students' point of view, if you think of our GCSE students or our A-level students, those exams are kind of getting ever nearer for them, but they're not quite near enough for them to feel ready to tackle them. That kind of feeling amongst students transfers itself to their discussions in their families. And certainly I would say, as head teacher, in my experience of being head, and I've been a head for 9 years now, I often think of January as the time that I'm going to be dealing with as much kind of reassurance of parents and reassurance of students, and in compared to any other month. The kind of the honeymoon period of September has gone. Our Year 7 students have settled in really well, or not, as the case may be. And some of those little kind of cracks start appearing, don't they, by January? And all the excitement of the end of term. You know, schools are amazing places to be in December, aren't they?
Absolutely.
There's a real kind of excitement amongst students.
Yeah.
I think January is a kind of back to reality, a kind of getting back on the treadmill. And all those things we just said about students then gets transferred, doesn't it, onto our staff. And I think if you add that to potentially a kind of busy time of year for marking workload, and a time of year where a lot of schools schedule some of their parents' evenings, plus the weather and the darkness, I genuinely think that January probably is quite tough.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with any of that. I mean, I do consciously try, well, certainly in December, because as you say, schools should be wonderful places in December. You know, the run up to Christmas should be a lovely time for everybody. I try not to schedule parents' evenings during that time where possible. And again, similarly, in the first few weeks back in January, where possible. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's driven by, you know, other factors that are going on. A lot of schools will have, certainly secondary schools obviously will have, you know, mock exams of various sorts at this time, and that tends to be preceded or followed by evenings of that sort. So there's a limit to what you can do. That's true, but yeah, and well, it's natural, isn't it, that for every high there's a low. You know, a kind of yin and yang type sort of way of thinking of things, and so therefore it's evening that out, as you say, smoothing out those peaks and troughs, and making and I think we also, for me, I need to be reminded of the fact that not everybody over the Christmas period will have had the best of times, and some of the young people that we have will be in quite difficult circumstances themselves, and actually feel that more acutely at that time of year. And the net result is they'll actually be quite glad to come back to school. They might not admit it, but the truth is that the structure, and you know, being surrounded by friends and familiarity is actually a good thing, and helps to lift their mood. So it isn't necessarily always the case that everybody is looking at it as you know, a sort of gloomy thing. It can actually be a good thing. But I tend to find, I certainly will say to colleagues, first week back, certainly keep an even keel. Don't do anything too spectacular. Don't try anything too adventurous. You know, just keep yourself ticking over. It's business as usual, and yes, there'll be things to plan for and so on. But you know, an even approach, I think, is the best, because one of the things is we're moving on to kind of mojo all year round and talking about resilience, and I'm thinking to myself, if you can treat victory and defeat both as imposters, as the poem goes, and if you can be a little bit more, you know, kind of even tempered about all things, it does help to smooth out those otherwise natural peaks and troughs that can buffet us.
just like we plan lessons, you're right. We plan lessons short term, medium term, long term, don't we? That idea of kind of keeping your mojo or keeping resilient is something that is short, medium, and long term as well, isn't it? And of course, it's really hard for young people who've only been on this planet for between 11 and 18 years to kind of understand that the world works that way. So kind of keeping your mojo as a teacher, we hope, don't we, that the adults that we work with have kind of got that sense of a kind of a longer term. So your advice to kind of pace yourself is a really good one in January, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, but moving away from January now, Jo, there are a lot of people in schools who, to use the phrase I've used, I'm not suggesting they would or other people would, but their mojo is in short supply, and they're struggling. They're struggling to keep it going, and that's not something immediately new. I mean, I think the last 4 or 5 years, certainly that's been evident. And so, why are so many people in schools finding it difficult to keep the mojo and keep resilient, and why are therefore so many deciding to leave the profession? What's your view?
I mean, you're so right about that, and there's quite a lot of data, isn't there, that backs that theory up. Apparently, now that after 10 years after qualifying as a teacher, only 59% of our teachers are still in the profession. Now, interestingly, 10 years ago, that figure was at 65%. So it's going in the wrong direction. We definitely, people talk about a recruitment and a retention kind of crisis, but I suppose this morning we're really talking about retention, aren't we? Why are staff finding it hard to keep wanting to be working in education? Retention rates are actually at their lowest level since 2010, which doesn't sound too long ago to old people like me, but that is when the data was first published in 2010. So they're at their lowest rates ever. I mean, your question rightly is why is that? What all the surveys are saying is kind of categorizing that into very specific kind of issues for teaching staff particularly. And number one is always this notion of workload leading to stress or to burnout. And I think previously that used to be attached to the notion of marking and administration. We all know, if we've been in the profession long enough, about kind of the tasks that teachers shouldn't be asked to do and how we can minimize that so that our staff can concentrate on what they do best, which is being in the classroom with young people. But it seems to be the workload challenge is now shifting. And what teachers are commenting on is that the workload that they're faced with is as the result of student behaviour and pastoral support pressures. And certainly as a head teacher, what I'm seeing is that I'm needing to do lots of thinking around have I got the right staff structure in place to service that heavy demand and that heavy need to support the pastoral issues that our young people and their families, their parents themselves are facing that's impacting on teachers' ability to teach in the classroom. Workload and stress always kind of features as that kind of that top theme. But I think what's leading to workload stress has kind of shifted in recent years.
I think that's a really good point. That's a really interesting point you make, because I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm sure you will have done, because obviously you've looked at this topic quite a lot. But in conversations I've had with people in the past from the DFE and so on, they've asked about workload, and they've tended to zone in on certain workload issues. What do you spend, and they ask you, how do you fill your week, and what are the things you do, and so on. I've never, I know your subject is English by background, and mine's history, so to a degree similar in certain respects. And I've never known a time in my entire teaching career where I wasn't taking home a substantial amount of work, and there was a lot of marking, that's always been part of the deal in a sense. Not downplaying it, I think there's too much for sure, but nevertheless, but things weren't the same. Retention was much higher 20 years ago, that we can pretty much be certain of that, and yet there is now, that workload, the actual work you were doing was not hugely different. I mean, there were differences, but it's not hugely different. But people are leaving now, so there's more to it than just marking and planning in the usual way. There's something else in there, and what you're touching on is that there are other things that haven't been properly addressed and are driving that. So why, if it isn't just workload or workload in the classic sense, why do people feel they no longer want to do this job?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, isn't it? And I'm sure listeners are sitting there almost kind of shouting out at the radio, kind of their theories. I know that when I meet potential candidates at interviews, so that's people that have shown an interest in working in the profession, there's a lot of talk around flexible working, around part-time hours.
Yeah.
There's a kind of new level of hope and expectation, rightly so, around schools being more flexible and adaptable, because post-COVID people are working in a different way in other roles. There's definitely a sense that graduates or people at a similar level of education are going into employment hoping that they can work in hybrid ways. An expectation about career development and support for that, an expectation around work-life balance and the employer's role in helping them create that, and teaching suits people who like being around people, and the idea that you can work from home. Schools are getting smarter about, but it's by no means easy, is it? So I think there's a growing dissonance between maybe that expectation about what an employer can give. I think there's a dissonance between maybe people's expectations and the reality of what it feels like in the classroom now. And we haven't even touched on pay and conditions, although I'm always fascinated because people give that a lot of noise, don't they? And of course, all teachers want to be paid their worth. But actually, it doesn't always come up as the top reason why people are leaving the profession. And certainly the pay on entering teaching is commensurate with other graduate roles now.
Yeah, no, it is. And that should, in theory, help with recruitment, although recruitment still seems to be low. So there are clearly other things going on. I'm all in favour of flexibility. I absolutely think that the profession needs to be able to be sensitive to, particularly, people who, for example, have young families and need to, sort of take account of that. And I always take the view that for sort of 99% of requests for absence, that they're genuine and that there is a real value in supporting colleagues to allowing them that absence. It's part of trust, isn't it? Because they give so much back in other ways that you want to do that. But there is a natural limit to a job where, by its very nature, you've got to be there with young people, and you've got to be, even if you're not directly in front of a class, invariably schools need to know that lots of staff are around, not only for duties and meetings and such like, but also for cover and absences and things of that sort. So, and the connectivity that goes on between people in the times when they're not actually teaching, that they're also working with colleagues and they're part of a community, and that community has to thrive if it's going to work as a sort of functioning sort of community. So I think that while I'm sympathetic to that, it's a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I think that there's always going to be a limit which we're really going to struggle with to go beyond with a public service of our nature. And I'd be really surprised if people went into teaching not thinking that they could, spend half their time, at home, or because that's just not going to be the case, is it? You can't do it.
It's not, and there are little things that schools are doing, and actually some schools and bigger trusts are being really quite creative, aren't they? So from the trust that has now created a 9-day working week for their staff, and I think we're all fascinated to see the pros and cons of that. In my own school, I know I've got colleagues who just through luck of timetabling happen to have the last period of our teaching day as their PPA time. And a couple of them with young children have talked to me about how it's made such a difference that just once a week or maybe a couple of times in the half term, they've been able to pick their children up from school. And that's, I suppose, a real novelty still for them and for teaching the profession. But my concern as a head teacher is how I make that fair for people, how I give people that chance. And that's exactly where I see those limitations lying then. It's going to be really hard, I think, for our timetablers in school to provide a kind of fairness that is staff driven rather than all the other good reasons for creating a timetable and scheduling staff to teach when they do. But I mean, that's flexible working, and I don't think it's necessarily the only answer to somebody's mojo, if you like, or somebody's ability to kind of stay enjoying their role and staying kind of focused. Because you're right, there's people, I suppose, I count myself as one of those, who enjoy going out to work and like the separation between the working day and then your kind of personal time. But that is what the surveys are telling us, that's what staff want more of. And I suppose they are looking around, aren't they, at their peers and their family members who've maybe got a little bit more flexibility than they have.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I tell you what, we're going to pick this theme up and also, of course, talk about what else we can do to lift that mojo, and what it is that makes some people somehow more able to cope in the long term and stick with things than others. But we're going to just take a break now to hear a word from our sponsors and also to take in the latest education news. So we'll be back after the break.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are your teachers juggling multiple technology platforms and struggling to keep everything organised? Then Toddle might be the answer. Built by a team of ex-educators, Toddle offers an all-in-one solution for teachers that streamlines everything, from curriculum planning and assessments to communication and report cards. And the best part? Toddle comes inbuilt with an AI assistant that helps teachers save time and improve their practices. 85% of schools replaced 3 or more platforms when they brought in Toddle. Teachers using Toddle say that the platform helps them save up to 10 hours a week. That means more time for what really matters, supporting students and driving academic success. See how Toddle can support your school. Visit toddleapp.com.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's BetShow's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
as we welcome the new year and see out the old. Many of the news stories which have happened in education over the Christmas period will seem familiar. A number of newspapers and news sites give further details of the government's Children and Wellbeing in Schools Bill, which now contains more reform policies directed at schools. For example, no automatic right for children to be educated at home. A unique number identifying children so they can be tracked as they move out of school and into home education. This was highlighted with the tragic case of Sarah Sharif. The bill will also contain a guarantee that all teachers in private education and tutoring, as well as state education, must be working towards or in possession of qualified teacher status. And national pay scales will apply to all schools in England. Possibly the most important is that we may be facing a turning point away from the era of academisation, since the Schools Bill will end the automatic academisation of failing schools. The news site The Conversation, in a long read analysis of the era of academised schools, discusses whether or not they've been a success. With such a variety of academised schools, large academy chains and small, it's very difficult to compare one with another, they conclude. Overall, though, additional needs students are served better in non-academy schools, and teachers tend to have lower job satisfaction inside academy schools. A related story, which has appeared in The Guardian and the Times Education Supplement, as well as the BBC, concerns Mossbourne School, the standard bearer for the ultra-disciplined school, with chanting students before lessons, silent corridors, and draconian rules applied. A large number of parents at Mossbourne signed an open letter to The Guardian supporting the school, saying that it provided a caring and supportive and successful environment for their students and their children. This was in response to a number of stories in reaction to former teachers at the school and a number of other parents who described the school as psychologically abusive and scary. The debate about this kind of school will no doubt continue and will divide parents and divide teachers during 2025. A story familiar in 2024 is again in the news. Reported by the BBC, the Children's Laureate, Frank Cottrell Boyce, described the enormous equality gap which has been created by Britain's decaying schools. The leaking roofs, the rattling windows, the poor heating systems, and the poor quality of equipment, found mostly and disproportionately in areas of disadvantage. The Children's Laureate notes that this will cause long and lasting damage to these children's lives. And this is supported, as the BBC reports, by the Institute for Fiscal Studies, who found that in the last decade, spending on school buildings was 25% lower than in the previous decade. So no doubt news stories in the year ahead will be further reflections on the consequences of a decade of austerity. One of the most troubling stories which appeared in the Times Education Supplement was in response to a Department for Education survey, which revealed that between January and March of 2024, a quarter of schools reported weapons-related incidents, mostly concerning students bringing knives into school. And 1 in 10 teachers revealed during the same period knife-related incidents in their classrooms. And the survey organisation, Teachers Tap, revealed that in May last year, a quarter of teachers felt that poor behaviour in their classrooms was undermining their well-being. Something many of us have suspected for a long time was also revealed in Teachers Tab, as a survey of the number of detentions given out in the week before Christmas revealed that maths teachers were altogether more likely to give out detentions than art teachers. For all those who remember their maths lessons as being strict and their art lessons as being fun, alas, this supported that stereotype. Teachers Tab also revealed that in the week before Christmas, schools in disadvantaged areas were twice as likely to have given out detentions. And as we enter the new year, a survey in the Times Educational Supplement reveals, unsurprisingly, that only a third of teachers have any confidence that any length of Ofsted inspection is capable of truly and accurately reflecting the quality of a school. And wishing you a happy new year, that concludes the Teachers Talk Radio News for the Christmas period, brought to you by John Gibbs on Teachers Talk Radio.
That's great. Hello, Joe. Welcome back.
Hi, Carl. Thanks.
Interesting thing from the news there. Just well, a couple of things actually. I didn't know, or I've never really thought about it, but apparently that research says that maths teachers are more likely to set detentions than teachers of other subjects. Certainly art. Is that something you've come across before?
I don't know. I suppose a lot of the maths teachers that I've known have liked following systems, and a lot of art teachers aren't quite such systematic workers. Maybe setting detentions appeals to that element of their personality.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we're in danger of slipping into stereotypes. So apologies to the maths teachers out there. I'm sure this is an unfair, sweeping characterisation of things. Now, the other thing that came out of the news was about teacher retention. According to that research that's reported in The Conversation, teacher retention in multi-academy trusts seemingly being, on the whole, higher. Sorry, not teacher retention. Teachers leaving the profession, on the whole, higher in multi-academy trusts than in other schools. What do you make of that?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that's not something that I've researched a lot. I'm head teacher in a multi-academy trust. It's small. There are 2 secondary schools in it, and we're geographically very close. A lot of the advantages, therefore, of working in a trust are that we can meet together often. We're serving the same community, and we always see that as the secret of the success in our trust. I wonder whether in the larger trusts, that kind of ability to feel seen as an employee, to be feel part of something very local and very specific that serves your community is something that maybe is easier to achieve in a smaller trust or a standalone academy. It's interesting, isn't it?
It's a certain thought and interesting insight you've given there, because I suppose it could be that because the bigger the trust, the bigger the gap between the people at the very top and the people working at school level, inevitably, because obviously there's more bases to cover. So is that possibly something there that we need to think about? Because the relationship between, to put it bluntly, the people that are perceived to be in charge of the organisation, and as a head teacher, and I know as a head teacher, that's a critical element in the success of a school and establishing the right climate. If that relationship is more distant, it may be that then you must have to systemize, as it were, your approach to, I don't know, staff requests for flexibility or, absence leave or whatever it might be. And that creates a lower level of satisfaction or sense of fulfillment and connectivity with the organisation that you're part of. I don't know, but it's certainly something that I think is worth, reflecting on.
Yes, I agree, and I think that's not a bad theory at all, Carl. There's pros and cons to every level of size in an organisation, isn't there? But if overall the data is saying that the bigger trusts are finding it hard to retain people, then they themselves need to do some research, don't they, about why that is. Certainly, the general data we're told about retention in schools is the notion that the support of your line manager, the support of leadership, however that looks in your organisation, is one of the factors that people place as most critical, most important to them. Would bear that theory out.
I've also got a feeling that I've read somewhere, but I can't say precisely, that retention in secondary schools is much lower than it is in primary schools. That the retention crisis, to use that phrase, is much more evident in secondary education than it is in primary. Is that your understanding?
And I don't know enough about that to speak to it, Carl. But yes, it seems that would seem a fair assumption, just kind of based on my own, personal experience, I suppose.
Well, let's think about your personal experience for a minute, Joe. Now, you've been a head teacher for 10 years, which I think that deserves some kind of a medal, actually, to be honest.
A mantelpiece clock or something.
At the very least. But what is it about you think that has made it possible for you to stay in the game?
That's a really, really good question, and quite a personal one, isn't it? Because I think that what enables you to stay in the job or the role that you're doing is a whole combination of things that are both professional and personal.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to have a really good support structure around me, people that have also worked in education and understand that world. And so I suppose in my family, my personal situation, that notion of kind of working really hard in term time and then really enjoying as a family that holiday time has seemed to be one of the real benefits that has kept me as an educationalist. That kind of lifestyle suits me. It kind of suits my family. On a professional level, there's always that question, isn't there, at interview? Or certainly when I was applying for jobs at the early stage of my career, what made you want to become a teacher? What makes you want to become a school leader? Yeah. And I always felt the answer to that question was that I needed to share some kind of, really passionate commitment to education as a vocation, that I wanted to come in and I wanted to do good and change the world, or at least change the world for 30 students in an English classroom on a Monday, kind of period one. Yeah. And I would give some of those answers, but I don't know how kind of much I kind of believed in them wholeheartedly as the only reason or the main reason. And I think probably reflecting back now after 9 or 10 years of leadership, I kind of realised more and more, and looking at other colleagues as well as myself that have stayed in roles, that there must be something there that keeps you interested, keeps you thriving, keeps you feeling like the job that you're doing has in significance or importance, not just to the stakeholders that you're serving, but in your own kind of professional mind. Yeah, the thing that kind of keeps you getting up in the morning, if you like. For me, I think it's about finding roles where I feel I have enough agency, that people have placed enough kind of trust in me to be able to do something well, whether that is inspire young people about poetry in an AQA poetry anthology, or whether that's about kind of school leadership and helping a school grow and develop in a good direction. So for me, that's what's kept me going. The ability to feel that I can, the cliche is, make a difference, but there are people around me who trust me to do that and who are prepared to give me the agency, the opportunity to do those things.
Sorry, carry on.
I think for other people, those motivations might be similar. and they might be different. I've got colleagues who I know thrive in their jobs because they're really creative people, and they pour energy and time and their own time and commitment into creating, for example, great schemes of learning for young people, or opportunities for them to take part in school productions. And it's that creativity that gives them the buzz, that keeps them getting up in the morning.
Yeah, I could not agree more. There's so much that you've said there, it's popping through my mind. I mean, when I first, put myself forward for teacher training, at the time, I wasn't at all convinced that I would, see it through. But I suppose, when you're looking around and you're thinking about what you might want to do, it first occurred to me, I thought, well, actually, I happened to be somebody that was very enthusiastic about my subject. It was something I enjoyed, talking about it, communicating to others about it. And so I thought, well, this seems like a job where I might be able to do that. So then when I tried it on teacher training, I found, hey, I quite enjoy this. I enjoy this. This is fun. Yes, it's hard work, but it's fun. And by doing that, I then, developed the enthusiasm, and the passion came from that. Now, why did I enjoy it? Well, the same thing as you, really. I mean, yes, I love the whole experience of communicating things with other people, and sharing what I'm interested in with them, and also the agency that the job gives you. It gives you that, or it did give you that creativity, that opportunity to you're the king or the queen of the castle when you're in the classroom. You're the person who sets the tone, sets the agenda, creates the resources, or at least ways it was when, I was teaching on a full-time timetable. And maybe what we were saying earlier, maybe in some schools, and I wouldn't hesitate to say anything about Multi-Academy Trust as a generality, but in some places, they've gone down a route of taking away some of that freedom, some of that agency from teachers, who've then felt that they're not trusted as much, subliminally or otherwise. They felt that, and that has taken some of the pleasure out of the experience. What do you think?
I think that's true, but I think again we run the risk of stereotyping Multi-Academy Trusts, don't we? Because and I know you were really careful not to suggest that that's what happens everywhere, but that what you describe as being kind of king or queen of your own castle, at any layer in the organisation, that's important, isn't it? Teaching in schools is one of those few kind of employment areas where the majority of people that you're working with are probably graduates, all with highly skilled, highly qualified, highly intellectual, but in different ways and in different areas with different specialisms. But this notion of whether you are a lunchtime supervisor, whether you're a newly employed teacher in a school, whether you're a school leader or a middle leader, that idea that you feel empowered and trusted to be able to make your own decisions about the things that you feel matter in your role, I think is crucial. And whilst we're maybe standardizing curriculums or even some of our pedagogical approaches in the classroom, involving people in those conversations and giving them the agency to be part of the discussion and the decision making around that, I think that's the kind of the golden balance, isn't it? Yeah, we want this consistency because we want every student to get as good an experience as they possibly can. In our school, we call it the twin test. If two twins are in two different classrooms across the corridor, how do we know that they're both getting the best deal that they possibly could from their teachers?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, but actually, those teachers need to feel part of that, don't they? Part of making that.
They do. Listen, Joe, what I'm going to do is just cut back to our sponsors for a few more words, and then I'm going to pick up on that sense of agency, because I'm certainly sensing from you that you see that as crucial, that definitely has occurred to me as being important. So maybe we can explore that concept a little bit more. So just a word from our sponsors.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalised timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271 because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
Hey Education Changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
Hi there, Joe. We've got somebody who we've got Rara who actually is asking to come in and give a view. So I'm just gonna see if we can get a word from Rara. I don't know anything more about that. Just let me tap that in. So we've sent an invite to Rara now, and we'll see if she's able to join us. In the meantime, agency. So we're talking about agency and not just in the context of what multi-academy trust may or may not allow with agency, but also everybody else in the building as well and trust that goes with that. Do you think there's a relationship between the increasing higher stakes accountability system that we've seen certainly since, say, the early 2000s, the level of accountability and the higher stakes nature of it has certainly stepped up? Is there a relationship between that and then the level of trust which perhaps has been lost in schools more generally as people have felt that somehow they can't, the leaders can't take the risk of allowing people agency because, you know, something might happen that will go wrong?
Yeah, I think you're really right about that. But it's a kind of false economy, isn't it? Because if as a school leader you start imposing more and trusting less, what you're really doing is you're kind of putting all of that accountability into kind of one kind of pot, where good leaders with good strategies and good ways to implement those strategies exist, and you bring your staff with you and your colleagues want to join that, you know, metaphorical bus. That's all well and good, isn't it? But the moment as a school leader that you kind of try and roll out a system or a process or a strategy that doesn't get the buy-in of staff, you're never going to make that work. So you're right, there's a pressure on school leaders with the accountability system, but it's very, very short-sighted if as a school leader you feel that you can affect that change, you know, with a small group of people or on your own. I think that the importance of bringing your staff with you, whether you're in a small primary school, whether you're in a really large secondary or multi-academy trust, is just so crucial. And I haven't really met any educationists that disagree with that, if I'm honest.
No. Just to explain, Rara was unfortunately unable to join us as a contributor, but I would like to invite, because we've got lots of people who've joined us live today for the show, and I would like to invite them to input their messages so at least we can see them, and I'll get, if I can see some, I'll certainly read them out, because there's a lot of people here who are interested in this issue, and I think we can all understand why. Is it always bad to lose your mojo, or is it normal, do you think?
I think, again, it's normal. You know, you asked me about mine, and I talked about kind of the professional and the personal. And nobody, we tell our students this, don't we? You can't expect to go through a profession and you know, be untouched by some really tricky things to deal with, as well as some kind of joyous moments. That's part of life's rich tapestry, isn't it? I suppose it's being able to understand yourself well enough to know when you're just feeling a little bit down and that's going to right itself, or whether you're a little bit maybe bored in your current role and you need something new or fresh to re-energize you. I know that throughout my career, it hasn't always been about moving job roles or job locations. It's been about recognizing what I really love about my current role, and making sure that there's enough to keep me interested. It sounds kind of professionally very selfish, doesn't it? But actually, I think the longer term effect is a positive one for everybody. It's having enough to keep you interested, that your ideas are fresh, that you're open-minded, that you've got things to talk about with people, your colleagues, to you know, really keep what you're offering the young people in your school to be the best opportunities. For me, I've kind of recognized that in myself. When I'm not interested, or when I kind of feel like I'm caring less and that passion has gone, I know that I need to do something. I need to take a positive action to do something about that. And it might be something as simple as, maybe I need to do a little bit of research around something. Maybe I need to read more. Maybe I need to get out and meet some new colleagues in a new environment that are going to give me some fresh ideas. Maybe I need to go and visit another school to try and kind of share best practice. Maybe I need to improve my coaching skills. And I think it's whatever role in the organisation you are, it's about recognising and understanding and knowing yourself. So losing your mojo is maybe, it's almost like a psychological health check sign, isn't it? Just like, I don't know, if nutritionally we're not treating our bodies well, we need to kind of readjust that, or we haven't had enough exercise, we know we need to do something. Losing your mojo is maybe just a signal to yourself that you need to refresh in some way.
Yeah, you've got to listen, haven't you? Listen to yourself and be able to recognise those signs. I guess there might be, from the research, an indication that there are certain times, other things being equal, there are certain times in your professional career when you are more or less likely to lose your mojo. The evidence that you were referring to at the start of the show about how, you know, within 10 years, I think there's some evidence for 5 years, but within 10 years, the number of people that drop out is what, 64% or something. Maybe when people, you know, hit that sort of, they're established, they've thrown themselves in. I mean, obviously mature entrants will come at a different age, but let's assume that most people start sometime in their 20s, and then they get to their 30s, and, you know, other considerations then come into their life, and maybe at that point, what was attractive to them about the job is no longer as attractive, or maybe they have just become different people. But something's going on there, because it seems to be a lot of people, a lot of women particularly in their 30s, who are dropping out of the profession, and then a lot of people more generally in their mid-50s onwards who are saying, you know, I'm hanging up my mortarboard now, I've done this.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There are kind of key personal points, aren't they, in those times. It's really interesting when your kind of school is made up of people that have maybe joined your staff at certain points. At my school currently, there are quite a few people who are, I suppose you can describe them as a sandwich generation. They're colleagues who have got families and young people and all of the busyness that involves. And maybe they've also got more aging parents who are kind of placing other kind of caring responsibilities on them. Thing. And it takes us back to that kind of flexibility conversation, doesn't it? There are maybe other jobs where your ability to support your family members can be more flexible than in the kind of cut and thrust of term time. I think, we said that pay wasn't always kind of top of people's lists, but by the time you've worked in teaching, you've maybe reached the top of the main pay scale in a lot of schools. And unless you want to take on additional responsibility, maybe that's where you feel that your kind of pay is stagnating, or that other 30-year-olds in other graduate professions, their pay is still accelerating at that point at a faster pace. So this attractive salary of over 30 grand for new entrants to the profession is all well and good, but actually, what about those people that have got the expertise of 10 years in the classroom? I think it's hard for people. You've been teaching for 10 years. You've probably spent a lot of time honing your craft as your pedagogical craft. And then you get to kind of 10 years and without, I don't know, maybe something even as subtle as a syllabus change, or as an English teacher teaching a new text. It can be repetitive. Timetables suit some people, but always knowing what you're going to be teaching on Tuesday period 2 in spring term 2, that's not as energizing for everybody.
No, I remember saying first sort of 15 years of my career, and I was head of department, fortunately, quite, relatively soon in my own career. And I remember saying to people, I don't think I'd had a single year when teaching GCSE and A-level in the different subjects, not had a single year where all the syllabuses have been the same, that there'd always been a change. And while that was a negative in some ways, in other ways it was a positive, because you're refreshing, you're re-engaging with things. And I think that is crucial. To feeling that you're restarting your journey. You've got a different focus. You've got a different sense of momentum, and it is critical. Otherwise, it's very, very easy to slip into a sense that nothing changes, when of course everything has to change. It's a bit of a cliche, but I sometimes say there are only two gears in education: forwards and backwards. Neutral tends to not be there, and on a personal level, I feel that you gotta want to be doing stuff. And now, does that mean, Joe, that maybe we need to start looking at the models that you see in some other countries, where people get a chance to go off on sabbatical once every 5 years or something like that?
That's really attractive, isn't it? I think that would be a really exciting opportunity in this profession. You're right. A lot of European countries offer that chance to educationalists, doesn't it? I think for a lot of people, they do. They look around, they change their role, they take on responsibilities. I think increasingly there's the opportunity to kind of pick those up and put those to one side and to do things temporarily, because the thing about teachers leaving the profession, it does create opportunities for that movement, creates opportunities for people that remain within it. But I think it's probably for a lot of people, kind of, it's more fundamental than that. I mean, those are professional opportunities, but the personal notion of understanding what motivates you yourself goes just as long a way, I think, to managing your career expectations. One of the things that we do, certainly when we appoint senior staff, but increasingly when we appoint middle leaders, as part of the recruitment and onboarding process, we do something called DISC profiling. Now, there's lots of different ways to do this, whether it's a psychometric test format, but getting candidates or getting the people as part of the onboarding process to fill in a gut reaction kind of survey, which then produces a report, which is certainly not gospel, but might have some valuable ideas in there about what motivates them, what personality traits they have that are ones they feel very comfortable with, what takes them outside their comfort zone, what they are naturally strong at doing, what they might need more support with. And I find conversations, those kind of coaching conversations with people at any level in the organisation, really, really valuable ones. We have appraisal systems, we have performance development management systems, but actually the most valuable part of those, I always think, are a one-to-one conversation with somebody about So what interests you? What are you? What kind of lights your fire? What gets you out of bed on a Monday morning? And then as a school leader, being able to look throughout the year for opportunities for those people to be able to kind of feed that need, if you like, whether it is variety, creativity, whether it's the chance to influence others, whether it's honing just a part of their pedagogy that they really want to work on, because that's what they're fascinated by.
Well, I'm glad that you touched on appraisal and systems connected with it. I mean, one of the things that I've done this year in my school is we've actually gone so far as we've scrapped appraisal and we've scrapped targets, and we've instead replaced it with what we call professional development plans, and that's effectively a professional coaching model. So instead of having an appraiser, you have a professional coach, and the focus of that coach is very much more on understanding the person that you're coaching, getting to having a professional relationship with them, and making them feel like somebody is giving them professional advice, career advice, from the perspective of the organisation they're working for, which I mean, it's early days yet, but I do think more generally is very much, I think, the way that we should be doing those sorts of things. We're running out of time rapidly, and I'm finding that this is a great shame, because I think there's bags and bags more that we could talk about here than we've had time to touch on. Just in the last couple of minutes, I just wanted briefly your thoughts on the present government and whether they are heading in the right direction as far as improving retention. Not saying that it's happening yet, but are they heading in the right direction? Are there other things, that maybe you think they should be doing that they're not doing?
I think certainly at the start of the new government's term in office, there were some really great moves to suggest that they were listening, that they cared about the teaching profession, that they wanted to improve it. And that early kind of pay rise was a real marker in the sand, wasn't it, of that commitment? And I think that was a really good start. I like very much the listening around flexibility, flexible working, the idea that teachers should take PPA off-site. I think that the government need to show that they understand that there are different tensions within different parts of the system. So whilst that's maybe easier to enable in primary schools, it's much more difficult, that PPA issue in secondary schools. But I get the impression that they started by wanting to listen. I think it's helpful as a school leader that the government has gone to the School Teachers Pay Review Board already with their indication of kind of pay progression for next year, setting it around 2.8%. As a school leader, we've never had that kind of early indication for the government. Normally it's the other way around. So I think there are some genuinely practical things, but you're not going to solve the system unless the system is properly funded. And whilst we're hearing about all of the pulls on that funding and the unlikelihood, I think that we're going to shake Theresa May's proverbial money tree and find more. I think some of the things that we've talked about, creating time for teachers to do them, whether that's have a decent professional development conversation or whether that's to find some flexibility. I think those have got to happen if the things are going to change. So
good start, long way to go is the top and bottom of it. Thank you so much, Jo. It's been absolutely fascinating and a real pleasure. And you've given us so much here to think about. If my advice to the government would be, actually listen to this podcast and because you're trying to get an insight into things, and we've not covered everything and solved everything, but covering the thoughts of people like yourself are, I think, critical to understanding the nature of what's been happening in our schools. Thank you ever so much. We're running slightly over time, so I'm going to have to finish it there. It's a topic that I think is so important to all of us at the moment. Okay,
so thank you for having me as a guest, Carl.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure joining you this morning. All the best.
My pleasure, and thank you to all our listeners this morning, because there've been a lot of people engaging with the program. And if you know that if you've enjoyed the program and you feel other colleagues would as well, feel free to share the podcast with them. Okay, goodbye everybody. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time, and don't forget to listen to Teachers Talk Radio. There's lots of great shows coming up over the next few days. Thank you very much.